How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Hot Takes with Holmes here on Radio Free Radford. My name is Blake Holmes, and as always, I'm here with my co-host Isaiah Addair, and today we've got a great show ahead for you. First, as always, if you like what you hear on Radio Free Radford, you want to support the station, be sure to follow their social media pages. Their Twitter is at Radio Free Raddy, Instagram and Facebook are Radio Free Radford. That's Twitter at Radio Free Raddy, Instagram and Facebook Radio Free Radford. We are also on Facebook and YouTube. You can find us there at Hot Takes with Holmes on both of the sites, so be sure to check that out. And if you want to support our show here, we only have 2 broadcasts left in its entirety. Insane to think about, as we will not be doing shows during exam week, so next week will be the final broadcast of Hot Takes with Holmes. So be sure to stick around, and if you want to catch that, go ahead and do that. We'll be live same time next week. But with that being said, stick around with us. Today we're going to be talking about the MLB, the NFL, and the NBA playoffs. Let's start today's show with Major League Baseball, though. Starting it off, as I said, with the MLB. We've had a pretty successful and exciting start to the season. Go over the standings, talking with the American League in the AL East. The Tampa Bay Rays still are on top of the division at 15-8. The New York Yankees are in second, and the Boston Red Sox, maybe with a World Series hangover, at 9-13, barely above the Baltimore Orioles, who again was the worst team in baseball last season. The AL Central has the Minnesota Twins on top with the Cleveland Indians right behind them. The other day, the Indians making headlines, giving up a 4-run lead in the 9th inning to the Atlanta Braves, in which the Braves were able to take home a win, and they won the series 2-1. In the AL West, the Seattle Mariners are still towards the top of the division, 16-9. There are several teams right behind them, the Astros, the Rangers, and the Athletics. That's a very tough division top to bottom as well. In the NL, we go to the NL East. The New York Mets and the Philadelphia Phillies are tied on top of the division at 12-10. Atlanta right behind them at 11-10. In the NL Central, the Pittsburgh Pirates and the St. Louis Cardinals have overtaken the Brewers by a game, the Pirates being 12-8 and the Cardinals being 13-9. The Pirates actually went off to a surprising start. Didn't really expect a ton from them this year. In the NL West, the Los Angeles Dodgers are ahead by 2.5 games on the Padres and Diamondbacks. The Rockies take a little bit of a tumble this year, too. This was a team that I thought potentially would be contending for the top of the NL. They still have some fantastic assets in Charlie Blackmon, Nolan Arenado, Trevor Story, just to name a few. But LA, strong as ever, on top of the division. I do also want to point out that my MVP pick early for the National League, just because he deserves attention, is Christian Yelich. They've played like 23 games. He's hit 13 home runs. It's absolutely ridiculous. This guy is phenomenal. There's a reason he won the NL MVP last year. There's a chance he'd go back-to-back if he can keep up this type of production. On the same side, Cody Bellinger for the Dodgers is fantastic so far, batting .424 in his average with 11 home runs right behind Yelich for the NL lead. Tim Anderson is another player that's been surprising to me for the Chicago White Sox in the AL. This is going to be a very fun and tough MVP race towards the end of the season if we can get this type of production from everybody. So as I said, briefly talking about the MLB, we'll go to the NFL. As many people know, the NFL draft begins this Thursday. There's a lot of storylines going on right now. One big one this morning was Mel Kiper, the draft guru for ESPN, along with Todd McShay, actually said that there is a 99.9% chance that Kyler Murray will end up as an Arizona Cardinal. So Isaiah, our local Arizona Cardinals fan, I need to ask you, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that it's a good move? And are you really sold on the fact that Murray is that much better than Rosen to where you need to essentially pick him number 1?
I like how you said our local Arizona Cardinal fan, because I think I'm one of only 2 on campus that I know of. 10,000 people, it's okay. But I don't know. I like Murray a lot more than I like Josh Rosen. Being 100% honest, I do like him a lot more. But as I was telling you, Blake, before the show, I would much rather use that first pick, trade back a couple picks, stockpile a first for next year, another, a late round first this year, and, just be a couple picks behind the one, like Oakland Raiders. Trade back to 4 like I had us in the mock draft to get a 24th or 27th this year, and then get a first next year. I think it'd be great value for the pick, and just give Josh Rosen another year. You got a ton of needs, especially with breaking news Patrick Peterson maybe being traded from the Cardinals. Going to have tons of holes in the team. You have cornerback, offensive line, receiver, and arguably quarterback, I guess, defensive tackle. You have a lot of holes. You need to not spend 2 first-round picks in consecutive years Get like Ed Oliver or Quentin Williams or even Nick Bosa. Even though I'm not a big, huge fan of him, surprisingly, I'd get one of those guys. Work on building your holes, and next year you'll have 2 first-round picks. Get a quarterback then if you need it. I do like Curry a whole lot more, but I'm not sold that he's the answer right now.
And I like the way you said it. You said off camera as well that just the quarterback class next year is better in general. And if the Cardinals, I'm not saying tank this year. No team should start off a season, unless you're the Cleveland Cavaliers without LeBron James, should start off a season trying to tank. That should never be a team's philosophy. However, if the season doesn't go as you envision and you end up with a good draft pick again next year, I agree. I think Rosen's still a good player. I think he's a developmental project that is going to take some time to turn into an NFL caliber quarterback. I'm not saying that he won't go out and produce as a sophomore or as a second-year quarterback. I just think that he deserves and he needs more time to retool a little bit. However, when you're talking about the quarterback class next year, Tua Tagovailoa is a name that I don't care. That name alone should almost make you consider, okay, should we wait and try to get Tua next season, make some moves? I just think that going with I'm not saying Kyler isn't a good quarterback. I think there's a reason he's going number 1 overall, most likely. But in the case of the Cardinals, to me, they would be better to move that pick, trade down. I don't think it'll happen, but that's what I think should happen, is they should trade down maybe to an Oakland, maybe to someone else, and go and let them get Kyler. Kyler could be great, but you have more chances at next year at a quarterback. This year, you need to focus on your defense.
And not just that, like talking about, like I mentioned, Patrick Peterson's trade. If you pass up on, you spend a number 10 overall pick on a quarterback 1 year. The very next year, let him go. What's that say to your team? Like, you already have very little chemistry because you let Tyrann Mathieu walk a couple years ago, Tony Jefferson, let your whole defense practically walk. And now Patrick Peterson's wanting out, and there was something on an Instagram post he posted today. One of the old defensive backs, I think it might have been Tony Jefferson, said things are going to be that way until you change the upper level management, like president and CEO, which is the same guy for the Cardinals. And what does it say if you're already, the whole defense is already losing chemistry because you're just getting rid of guys, and the whole team, it's causing turmoil. Then you start doing it with your offense. Who's going to be next? David Johnson? Are they going to refuse to re-sign Larry Fitzgerald after this year, even if he wants to come back? You don't want to do that, especially if any quarterback is going to be the centerpiece for your team. Even Kyler Murray, you don't want him to think, oh, if I play bad, like I could be replaced next year. And that's what it's looking like right now. It's just a bad team for like a bad situation for the locker room.
As I said, that is one of many headlines going around the NFL draft right now, that being one of the bigger ones, of course. Basically, what I want to talk about next with the NFL draft is the team we expect to make the most or the best moves. So, in a sense, do we expect them to make a ton of trades, or who do we expect to make the most moves that directly benefit their team? I'm going to start with you.
I think I'm going to go with the... I don't know. I think I'm going to go with the New York Jets. They want to trade down from the number 3 spot. They already have a decent amount of picks. They're trying to trade Sheldon Richardson. Could possibly get an extra late first, early second for, I'm talking Leonard Williams, I'm sorry. Could possibly get an extra pick for them. They want to trade out of 3. If they trade down, if they trade Leonard Williams, they're going to have a hole at defensive tackle, but not a big one. They could fill that hole. The outside linebacker, if they stay at 3, get Josh Allen. Solid outside linebacker that will be there. Or even Ed Oliver if they do trade away Leonard Williams. And there's a report just a second ago. They're open to trading away Robbie Anderson, their top receiver for the past couple years, for decent compensation. You might get another second-round pick out of that. And this receiver class this year is pretty interesting. And not that bad either. And then they have Quincy Enunwa coming back from injury this year for the Jets. So their receiving core, even if they don't have Anderson, they draft a receiver in the second round. That could be good. And even Anderson's contract's up, so he might be wanting a big deal after this year. So they could, just in the first couple rounds and trading away, Leonard Williams and Robbie Anderson, could extremely benefit their team and maybe not set them up to compete for an AFC North title next year. Or East, I'm sorry. AFC East title next year. Could very well be the year after that if Tom Brady does retire. And they could definitely compete with Buffalo and Miami.
My team that I think is going to try to make the most moves is the other team from New York, the New York Giants. I think I went through and I looked at the total 256 picks in this draft. the Giants, if I counted correctly, have like 13 picks. So in that mind, with the holes, you're obviously starting from scratch if you are the New York Giants. Eli Manning is out the door in the next couple of years, most likely. Odell Beckham is no longer on your team. You're moving forward with Sterling Shepard as your number one guy, as your number one receiver. You have, of course, Saquon Barkley in the backfield. With 13 picks, you've got to do something correctly. And I think that the Giants, in this case, will do that. One, I think they're going to draft a developmental quarterback. I don't think they're going to go and, unless they take a chance on Dwayne Haskins, I don't think they're going to take a quarterback in the first round. With that being said, I think they may take the case in the route that some other teams do and just take a flyer on a guy and say, okay, let's see how you can prove yourself in the first year in practice, in preseason, things like that. Because as we said, the quarterback class next year is a lot better. So in a sense, take a chance on a guy this year. If it doesn't work out, if he's not what you're hoping or he doesn't show any progression, go and get one of the guys next year. I don't think they're in a pressing need. And no matter what everyone says, I still don't think Eli Manning is a terrible quarterback. He's savvy. He knows the ins and outs of the NFL game. And he's been in this league long enough that really he deserves a little bit more respect than he gets. I'm not saying he is the 2008, 2011, I believe it was either 2008 or 2010, something like that, Super Bowl winning Eli Manning. He's not that Eli Manning, but he's not this terrible lower level quarterback that everyone wants to make him out to be. There's a reason he was top 5 in passing yards last year. So again, I think they face the pressing needs they have, like a cornerback. They'll beef up their offensive line. And I think to compete for the NFC East, even without Odell Beckham, they're going to have a heck of a draft, which I'm saying they might here this year. That's all we're going to talk about for the NFL draft. Again, that starts on Thursday, the first round, and then I believe it goes Thursday is the round 1, Friday will be rounds 2 and 3, and Saturday will be rounds 4 through 7. Saturday will be an all-day event. So be sure to check that out and see who your favorite team will be adding in this year's draft. Now we're going to talk about the NBA playoffs, where this will be the bulk of the show. We all know that the playoffs are typically dominated by certain teams, and in some series that's absolutely the case. The Bucks and the Celtics both swept their first round series. The Milwaukee Bucks beating the Detroit Pistons, and the Boston Celtics sweeping the Indiana Pacers, which again, I said the Pacers without Victor Oladipo were going to get exposed a little bit, and they got a bad matchup getting Kyrie and the Celtics in the first round. Kyrie playing like a man on a mission. Gordon Hayward's starting to finally make strides again, becoming the player that we used to know him as, coming off the bench for this team. So the Celtics are tough. So are the Bucks. They both sweep the first round. A lot of series at 3-1 right now, though. Fun fact: out of those, of the 8 total playoff series, only one of them is not 3-1 or a sweep, and we will talk about that here soon. But again, we're going to go through and talk about each series for now. In the Eastern Conference, as I mentioned, the Bucks sweeping the Pistons. Pistons having no match. Blake Griffin actually sitting at the first 2 games of the series and tried to come back for the last game, but the Bucks dominated 124-104 to end the series in Detroit. We go to the 2 seed. After the Magic had a surprising Game 1 win, the Raptors took control and have not looked back, as they have won the last 3 games. The last game winning by, I believe that's 22 points, so a big-time win in Orlando. Orlando will have to try to play tonight in Toronto to try to keep the series alive. We talk about the Sixers and the Nets, same story. The Sixers, although it's been closer than the Raptors and the Magic have in the past 3 games. They will be in Philadelphia tonight at 8 p.m. to see who can potentially, if the Sixers can clinch the series at 4-1 in 5 games, or if the Nets can stretch it to 6 games. So still, Nets have a fighting chance. We've seen 3-1 deficits overcame before, not often. We've seen it overcome before. Same thing for the Magic. Going, again, the Celtics and the Pacers, I discussed that already. The Celtics sweeping that series. In the Western Conference, the Golden State Warriors lead the LA Clippers 3-1. Clippers got a surprising Game 2 win in Oracle, but the Warriors took over from there. Again, tomorrow, that series could be decided. We have a 6th game. We've seen, again, it's going to be in Oracle, but LA's won in Oracle 1 time. In the 3 spot, we have the Portland Trailblazers and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Who would have expected this? The Thunder out to a 3-1 deficit, or 3-1 lead, or actually the Thunder at a 3-1 deficit of the Trailblazers. Lillard's been out of his mind right now. On the road, they went 111-98 in Game 4. They will try to close it out at home, and that's going to be a tough series. It's going to be a fun one to watch because the Thunder at 4, if they get beat 4-1, it'll be interesting to see what type of offseason moves they make this year. In the 4v5 matchup, the Rockets lead the Jazz, which I said the Jazz are an underrated team, but that's a very bad draw for them. The Rockets are probably the second best team in the Western Conference to me, and so for them to be the 4 seed, that was a tough break for Utah, but they got to win the last game. They did win their second game in Utah 107-91. Most of the games in this series have been very far apart, except for a Game 3 win by the Rockets. So 3-1 going back to Houston. I left out a series because the only series in the entire playoffs that is not a sweep or 3-1 is the Denver Nuggets and the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs actually held a 2-1 lead going into Game 4 in San Antonio, but the Nuggets were able to get a gritty win, 117-103 at San Antonio. Fun fact, that is the first win that the Nuggets have had in San Antonio since 2012. So what a time for that to come in. Now the Nuggets do still hold the home court advantage. If they can just win home games, they will advance. So they will play tonight in Denver against the Spurs. Isaiah, I gotta ask, is this the series of the playoffs so far, or has there been other series to you that have been more exciting?
I would say right now just that, like you said, the other games have had at least a couple games out of the series. Most of them, that's been kind of like they've just been runaways in most of the games. Yeah, and like you said, every other series is 3-1, and there was a couple sweeps. But most of the games have been runaways to this point. So I think it's nice that we have the matchup between San Antonio and Denver. So, I mean, because I don't think the teams are that far off from each other. You have Denver, in my opinion, obviously has so much more talent. But you have the Spurs, better coaching. They got Popovich, one of arguably the best coach of all time in NBA history anyway. And you have the more seasoned veterans. You have, I mean, they got DeMar DeRozan now, and we see, I mean, I don't think they really missed a beat without Kawhi because DeRozan's filled in really well. So you got more experience there. And you have the Nuggets. None of them, maybe one or two, had ever been to playoffs before. And I think it just, the inexperience versus the experience is why it's been so interesting, because you're seeing kind of a change of the guard where one of the just felt like perennial Western Conference championship teams, or was every other year was there at least, is now has a chance to get bounced in the first round by a team of a bunch of young guys. They're all, under 24 or something, with the exception of a couple. So I don't know. I like it. I like the dynamic of old versus young, old versus new. And I think to this point, yes, it probably has been the series of the playoffs.
For those watching on the Instagram Live or on the Facebook Live, that's a Nuggets hat. So I know a thing or two about this series. Some fun facts, as you said, about the Nuggets. The first thing, their average age is 24.2 years old. They are the 9th youngest playoff team in history. And they are the youngest 2 seed in NBA history. So this is a first for a lot of people. You think about it this. The only players, I'm going to name you can name all the players that have any kind of playoff experience at all on one hand. Paul Millsap with the Hawks. He's got a lot of playoff experience with the Jazz and the Hawks. Will Barton as a bench warmer for the Portland Trailblazers. Isaiah Thomas had a good run with the Boston Celtics. He's not a contributing player. And Mason Plumlee in his rookie year as on the Nets. Other than that, you don't have any playoff experience besides what's happened here. However, you know who stepped up this series? Nikola Jokic. You know who also stepped up in this series? Torrey Craig. Torrey Craig the other night went 5 of 7 from 3, had a career-high 18 points and a potential death sentence almost, going down 3-1 to a lower seed. Torrey Craig stepped up big time. Jamal Murray had a 21-point fourth quarter in Game 2 to get them back. This is a fiery team. But as you said, Derek White has played like a man on a mission for this Spurs team, dropping 36 in Game 3. You talk about DeMar DeRozan, you talk about Aldridge, being able to keep those level-headed and steady veterans to kind of calm the nerves maybe a little bit. So again, this is a great series. And obviously, it's got to go at least 2 more games. the game tonight will be the real telltale sign, because if the Spurs can find a way to win tonight, Denver will have to win 2 more games. And as I mentioned, they have such a tough time winning in San Antonio. This is a must-win for both teams. So be sure to check that out tonight at 9:30. But other than that, the main playmakers of the playoffs, of course, James Harden is unstoppable. It's ridiculous. You've seen clips of people trying to guard him, and it looks like he's just playing with people. The Warriors, again, don't look into this one game that they lost to the Clippers too hard. It really is it could be considered a fluke, because the Clippers obviously have not shown much other effort or much other fight in the 3 other games. So the Warriors, they did lose DeMarcus Cousins. Boogie Cousins is probably out for the playoffs unless he can somehow come back for the finals. They do not expect him to be back in a Warriors uniform for the rest of the season. So they only had to play with 4 All-Stars. What are they going to do? The Warriors, again, will have a tough road, but they should still be considered the favorites to win in the entire thing. So, quick show this week. So we're going to go ahead and get to the hot take of the week, starting with you. In anything, NFL draft, NBA playoffs, what is your hot take of the week?
My hot take is that the Arizona Cardinals trade Patrick Peterson for a sack of potatoes. I honestly, I don't know, with his contract, he's be owed like $15, $16 million a year. I don't see anybody giving up a high first for him. I think he's worthy of that. He's arguably the best corner in the NFL. Maybe if we could get a late round first for him, it would be worth it. But I don't see it. And this just in, as of 1 minute ago, he didn't show up to practice today, minicamp. It's a voluntary minicamp, yes, but I don't think he's ever missed one. And he's even been there this year up to this point. And he's not there today. So I think a deal will be done but before the first round of the draft takes place. And we might get it first. But I honestly think probably no more than a second round pick.
So for this week, I kind of broke the rules. I have 2. So the first one kind of goes into something that was breaking news today. The Phoenix Suns have fired their head coach, Igor Kokoskov, after 1 season at the helm. Devin Booker, in 5 years in the NBA, has had 5 different head coaches. Phoenix has got to figure out what is going on in their front office, because this is absolutely ridiculous. I'm sorry, Phoenix. Did you expect to be good this year? Did you really expect to contend in this Western Conference? No. Nobody gave you a fighting chance in this Western Conference, and it showed. You just don't have the talent. You don't have the assets to compete in this Western Conference. That's not saying you can't use it as a starting point. You have a star in Devin Booker. You've got DeAndre Ayton. Mikal Bridges has been a pretty good prospect. You have a chance to go and draft a John Morant this year. You can still be something here soon. To fire your head coach every single season, like the Suns have done, how are you supposed to do stability? You're talking about the Arizona Cardinals earlier, when they're not showing faith in their players, things like that. But what are you supposed to think if you were a member of the Phoenix Suns at this point? Every single season, look at the famous rebuilding prospects, but look at the famous rebuilding projects in sports history. How many of those have you ever seen where they fire a head coach every single year and they instantly start winning? I'll tell you, probably none. It's ridiculous. You can't expect to be a successful organization, a successful franchise, without some sort of stability. And the Suns have none whatsoever. What is Igor Kokoskov supposed to do there? He inherited a team that was just terrible. You got some assets, you've got some decent players, but you're still terrible. Is he supposed to go out and win 45 games with this team? No. Name me a coach in the league that Greg Popovich couldn't win 45 games with that team. I am fairly confident in saying that. I don't understand why the Suns are doing what they're doing, and it's ridiculous to me that Igor Kokoskov has been fired. He's going to make a great asset as maybe an assistant coach somewhere in the NBA. And my other hot take of the week, maybe not as fiery as that one, it's going to be just a good thing. I think we talked about this 2-2 series between the Nuggets and the Spurs. My hot take for the week is whoever wins that series is going to go to the Western Conference Finals. Because if everything goes the way it looks right now, the next round will be the Portland Trail Blazers waiting on the winner between the Spurs and the Nuggets. I'm not saying that just because I am a homer, as you can tell by my hat. I'm saying that because I think that both teams match up very well with the Portland Trail Blazers. If you think about it this way, the Blazers, they're missing Yusuf Nurkic. So in that sense, who is going to guard and contain for the Nuggets, Nikola Jokic, and for the Spurs, LaMarcus Aldridge? You also take a look at the Spurs. They have such a great defensive identity. They're a great defensive team. Damian Lillard is on a tear. Damian Lillard is, I am a firm believer in saying that Damian Lillard is the most underrated player in the NBA because I think he's consistently a top 3-point guard every single year, but no one talks about him as the best of in the conversation because he just doesn't have the team success. Everyone talks about Stephen Curry, which I think Curry overall has deserved a lot of the respect that he gets, a lot of the attention he gets. And you talk about Russell Westbrook, even though it's always funny. I say Russell Westbrook's having a down year, but he's still averaging a triple-double. So Westbrook, you always hear those things. You don't hear Lillard's name come up that often in those types of conversations. So in that sense, is Lillard playing fantastic? Absolutely. He's the entire reason they have a 3-1 lead over the Oklahoma City Thunder right now. What I am saying, though, is that I think that both of the teams in the Spurs and the Nuggets playoff series are going to be well equipped to face the Portland Trail Blazers in the next round. And that's why I say whoever wins that series, whether it be the Spurs or the Nuggets, will make it to the Western Conference Finals between either, and then they will face either the Rockets or the Warriors if everything goes the way it is planned right now. So, with that being said, that's going to do it here on Hot Takes with Holmes. Again, we got a little bit of an early closing here. Not a ton to talk about other than the NBA playoffs, so we'll have more to cover next week with the NFL draft and more playoff action, so be sure to check in. And remember, it's the last episode, the last edition of Hot Takes with Holmes next Tuesday here from Radio Free Radford and on Facebook Live. So again, if you want to be able to check that out, you want to see our farewell, then be sure to tune in next week. If you like what you heard today, then be sure to like our Facebook page. We'll update all that goes on here on Hot Takes with Holmes. Again, I will remind on that Facebook page about the time and things like that next week. We're also on YouTube, where all of our broadcasts are uploaded to. Again, I've slacked a lot with that lately. I will be sure to update that and put tonight's broadcast on by tonight. So be sure to check that out. If you missed a part of this broadcast, you want to go back and take a look, or you wanted to go back and look at some of our older broadcasts, we're on YouTube and Facebook, so be sure to like and follow those social media pages. Again, if you like what you hear on Radio Free Radford, their Twitter is at Radio Free Raddy, and Instagram and Facebook are Radio Free Radford. Be sure to like and follow those social media pages as well to be able to keep up with the content that goes out on the station and just to support the station in general. But with that being said, for my co-host Isaiah Addair, I'm Blake Holmes, and we'll see you next week for the final time here on Radio Free